Well, Selection Sunday is just hours away, and the field of 68 is really coming into focus right now. Our area is expected to have 4 teams in the dance this year. With more on what to expect, let's bring in basketball insider and author of zagsblog.com, Adam Zagoria. You can also read one of his latest articles in the New York Times today as well. So, Adam, thanks for coming in, man. It's a busy time.
Always a pleasure, Steve.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting year for March Madness because things have changed. The selection committee has changed their analytics a little bit and created a new metric called the net as a way to, I guess, better judge which teams should get in and which teams will not make it in. What's the early reaction to what you've seen from that new analytic?
Yeah, I mean, of course, when you and I were growing up, or just in recent years, it was all about the RPI. Right. Now it's about the net. The selection committee's trying to streamline the process and get a more comprehensive, objective determination of what teams should be in. But I think it's always going to be a little subjective, and we won't really know until Sunday, Selection Sunday on CBS, where any teams, left out that should have been in, or some that are in that shouldn't be. And I think there's always going to kind of be that controversy. And there's always going to be people who want to, some people want to go back to 64 teams, some people want 128. There's always going to be questions and controversy.
Okay, well, let's start with some of those questions. And St. John's is certainly right off the top. All indications show that they're going to get in, but right now they seem to be on that line that would make them one of the play-in teams, one of the first 4 taking the trip to Dayton. Should St. John's be happy that they're dancing, or should they be upset that they're a play-in team?
I mean, at this point, I think they should just be throwing a big party on Sunday if they get in. And if they don't get in, they have only themselves to blame. This has been, let's call it what it is. It's been a disappointing season for Chris Mullin at St. John's. They were picked 4th in the Big East. They went 8-10 and finished 7th. They lost 5 of their last 7 games.
After such a great start to the season.
They started 12-0, and then I think they've been 9-12 basically since then. And with that roster, that's really, not good. And if they don't get in the tournament, I think Chris Mullin's going to be feeling a lot of heat on Monday morning.
Really? You think so? Do you think that, how close do you think Mullin is to being on a hot seat?
Well, I mean, look, he's Chris Mullin, and he's the greatest player in the history of St. John's and one of the greatest college players ever. But that said, there's certainly a lot of St. John's fans who have questions about how the team was coached, all that. And let's say Chris has a lot going on now and, other aspects of his life. But at the end of the day, it's been a disappointing season. The last Big East team to make the tournament with an under 500 record in the league was UConn in 2012. So St. John's does get in. It's going to be sort of unique, but that shows how soft the bubble was this year.
Seton Hall's resume is actually now better than St. John's. Does more of that credit go to Miles Powell or Coach Kevin Willard?
I think both. I mean, look, Kevin Willard is a tremendous coach. I'm not sure he gets enough credit nationally. This is a guy, they lost 4 senior starters off this team. They were picked 8th in the league, Steve. They finished 3rd, and going into Saturday night, they were playing for a Big East tournament championship against Villanova. Miles Powell, explosive scorer, tremendous scorer, can really fill it up. He likes to play on the big stage. He's been fired up last couple nights at the Garden. So, they're fun to watch.
Can Willard cash in on this? Could you see him making a move to a bigger school?
I think so. His name was sort of briefly mentioned in the past at some other jobs like the Pittsburgh opening, which went to Jeff Capel, and other openings. And I think if you're an AD who's smart and knows what time it is, you're going to understand Kevin Willard has led this team now to 4 straight NCAA tournaments. He could win his 2nd Big East tournament title. The guy's just a tremendous coach.
Well, speaking of coaches, remember, he was at Iona before he made the big move, but now the Iona coach, Tim Cluess, has become really a mainstay there at Iona. 5 of the last 7 years, he's been in the dance. They're in the dance, once again this year. Could you ever see a scenario where Cluess, who, by the way, is signed through 2025, could you see a scenario where Cluess ever leaves?
Well, look, we went to St. John's. His family has connections to St. John's. He's been mentioned there in the past. If under some circumstances, Chris Mullin were to leave now or in the next couple of years, I think there's a certain segment of the fan base that says, hey, let's consider Tim Cluess. That said, he's built a home at Iona. He gets a certain type of player in there, a lot of transfers, a lot of guys that maybe wouldn't, get into other schools or play at other programs. And he's made that work. He's also, closer to whatever 60 than he is 35 or 40. So if you're looking for a young up-and-coming coach, he doesn't fit that. That said, the guy's a tremendous coach. He's been to the big dance, close to 70% of his time at Iona now.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, first off, New Rochelle's not too far away from Queens. And secondly, his fast tempo offense certainly plays into the younger brand of basketball. There's a fourth team that's going to the dance as well. Greg Renda has Fairleigh Dickinson going to the dance. What do we know about them? What can you tell us about them?
They have some local guys. Caleb Bishop, the forward, is from Patterson. Holloway is a local guy from New Jersey. Jaleel Jenkins, I think his name, the guard. So they've done a good job recruiting guys that they can get and develop talent in New Jersey and New York. Greg Horrenda is a great coach. He comes out to Bruce Springsteen's Rosalita when he comes out on the court. He also has a radio show. I think he and Coach K might be the only Division I coaches with their own radio shows.
Right.
So he's a fun guy, and he gets it. And all three of those teams could be in Dayton, like you said, Iona, FDU, and St. John's. We might have to fly out there, Steve.
Well, if three of those teams are going to Dayton, then definitely I think that the cameras are going to be on them. I think Knicks fans are going to be watching the NCAA tournament, clearly keeping a close eye on Zion Williamson. His name seems to be brought up as one of the big three for any team that picks him. How close is he to actually being a big three at the NBA level?
Well, first of all, it's funny. We were just talking to our colleague John Rothstein in there, and it really is true that Zion at this point is must-see television. He's an event when he plays. And I can't remember any other college player in recent memory, I don't know if you can, who's like this. I mean, the guy missed 5 games with a knee sprain. He comes back and he scored 60 points and grabbed 25 rebounds in 2 games since then. And he won the game Friday night against North Carolina in the last seconds. It's just incredible what he's doing. No one's seen anything like him before. As far as your big three thing, I know, look, if the Knicks in some fantasy world get Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and Zion, they'll bill him as part of their big three.
But would he be deserving of that as a rookie coming right out of college?
Look, I mean, on the one hand, you don't know how a college player is going to translate to the NBA until you see them. I was talking to Charles Barkley about that this week. He has questions about what position Zion is in the NBA and how.
But does it matter considering it's a flexible NBA right now?
Yeah, that's the other thing is who's going to guard Zion in the NBA, and I think he's going to sell tickets, and by that logic, he is maybe part of a big three. I mean, if you're an owner and you have a choice between R.J. Barrett, who's a great player, might turn out to be the better long-term pro, and Zion, who is going to sell tickets and jerseys and bring the fans in, you're going to want Zion.
Well, it's always interesting to get your insights. Always great to read your stories as well. You can catch him on zagsblog.com. Follow him on Twitter. You will not miss a thing. And your latest stories in the New York Times. Adam Zagoria, thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you, Steve. You're the best.
All right, thanks, brother. Stick around. Back in a minute.